The new Gatak Syulen is chock full of Xi'an labels, particularly for component bays, making it the first flyable ship to get a proper xenolinguistic treatment. In my previous video, I went over where you can find these labels throughout the ship, and you might want to check that video out before this one. Most of the labels are lifted from a single texture in the game files, but actually only about half of this texture is used on the Syulen. In this video, I'm going to translate and dissect what the rest of this texture says about other Gatak ships, and particularly the capital ship teased in the I Held the Line trailer for Squadron 42 at CitizenCon 2953. I'm Jael, and if you like videos about lore, languages, and all the little details, subscribe to my channel for more. You might be familiar with the concept of leaks for Star Citizen, and there sure were a fair few in the lead up to IAE 2953. While some are actually CIG staff members leaking information, a great majority of information that gets termed leaks is actually data mining of the game files to look at things that have been sent to us in our updates but not enabled in the game yet. That's actually where we first heard of the Syulen, and that's what we're doing here. This file is from the current live build and was present in the pre-release PTU build as well. Initially, it might look like one of the Xi'an letters, the long pieces of writing, but to understand what these textures represent, it's worth comparing it to another texture from the Syulen. You can see these textures are more like a model kit's sticker sheet, with lots of different graphics that are then going to be effectively cut out from the larger texture and stuck onto a surface. Note that this texture also has a bit of Xi'an text. It's actually a duplicate of the Song Shi Sao Shan insignia that is also on the other writing heavy texture. I'm going to read this from right to left like a vertical Xi'an text usually is. Going through the bits that do appear on the Syulen, we have the keep clear and caution labels seen in the cockpit, and then this central block contains the components. We have the cooler, jump drive, power plant, life support, shield generator, and computer. The fourth block contains the labels used for the floor of the ships, though the labels used on the elevator itself are stored in a different file. Finally, in the bottom left, we have the Song Shi Sao Shan label that denotes the approval of the Xi'an Empire. So moving through the unused labels, on the far right we have a Yanrath, which literally means the up-down object and would be signage for stairs. For comparison, an elevator is Nyanrath, or the up-down chamber. The second line actually includes a sentence. It says To Run Wang Wina, and then the last two syllables are Huaya and Twin. That translates to create a pull to release, and then hot and cold. The hot and cold might be unrelated to the preceding sentence, or this could be a bathroom control instruction. The next line across, which had the safety labels of keep clear and danger, has a couple more. There's Swale, meaning head warning, as in watch your head, and Tia Kwai Kieth, which is a sentence meaning caution needed. The final word in this block is Thasham, which just means access panel. The middle block that contained all the components labelled in the Syulen contains more that weren't labelled or weren't present. We have Quoyothli, which is the advanced tool for power or the battery, Quatoru, advanced tool for creating a pull or gravity generator, Atai, which just means component, Quonyaya, or advanced tool for searching and detecting, which is radar or sensors, and finally a component that's labelled potentially incorrectly in game, the Chailethwion, or quantum drive. The literal translation of this is really interesting because Chaila Shah for jump drive, it's kind of metaphorical. It starts with the same Tai, technology, but then the Xi'an word for light speed, Lethwi, means sort of unknowable speed. Wi is a somewhat philosophical and religious term in Xi'an, meaning the unknown and the unknowable. Then Yon at the end means pseudo, because of course quantum drives aren't actually light speed, so this basically translates as the pseudo light speed drive in Xi'an, but it contains like this kind of philosophical reference in the middle. It's possible that because this one is the longest at 4 syllables, it just didn't really fit in the label space, so that's why they then didn't actually use it in game. The next block starts with the label from the wall of the quarters. However, the next 3 syllables are all related to it. The first 2 syllables, Nyunyang, means sleep chamber, and on its own means cabin or quarters. But if you add on one of the other 3 syllables, you get a type or grade of accommodation. Nyunyang Tung means standard or crew quarters, Nyunyang Wal means the captain's quarters, and Nyunyang Hie means VIP or officer's quarters. After the blocks for airlock and cockpit, we have Kai, meaning maintenance, and Nyunti, which means fermentation chamber, but is also used to mean any sort of kitchen or food prep area. And then the last block is mostly another collection of generic ship-related terms. We have arai, meaning cargo. We're going to skip the next one for now. The next one after that is ka, which is just place, and you've seen that at the start of several words like toilet and cockpit. E means light, ro means gun, and quo tiai sao means the advanced tool that is a fleeing container and escape pod. Returning to the one that I skipped, this one actually isn't a word that's in the dictionary. It's a strange word, and this isn't a normally formed syllable. It says something like wawea, and if I were to translate it literally, it'd be something close to likely 7, which doesn't really make any sense as a single word. Until we're told otherwise, we can't really translate this. The only other possibility is that it's a typo and it was meant to say wa, meaning speak. So that's all of the texture. But what does it mean that we have a bunch of unused labels? Well, a good number of these labels are things that were never going to appear in a ship like the Syulen, like multiple grades of quarters and a kitchen. Also, I don't think that this was produced recently. It uses Xi'an font, which for a long time is the only typeface we had, while the controls we have seen for the Santok use a new font that has only been produced recently. You can tell the difference in how the dashes over letters like A are diagonal in the original Xi'an font, but horizontal in the new one. Most of the terms featured weren't in the Xi'an-language upon release in October 2017. A bunch like cockpit and many of the components were added to the dictionary later that year in November, but a good number of them were added somewhat out of the blue in 2019, including stairs, the different grades of quarters, and a number of other terms pertaining to ships. What's interesting is that some of the terms on the list added at the same time were nothing to do with ships, including sunrise, tomorrow, yesterday, nickname, and kehith, which is an evocative term meaning sort of smashed to total destruction. Now often, packages of terms like this have been released when there's something going on, like a letter being published for Alien Week, but this didn't correspond to any event like that, and there wasn't an overriding thematic link. Now, it's possible that the list of terms released in 2019 that eventually ended up on this texture was created to fill a need at that time for vocabulary related to Squadron 42 and the stricken Xi'an ship seen in the trailer. It's possible that the texture was created around the same time as just a list of labels needed for the rooms of that level of the game set on the ship, as it contains only a selection of the words from the list published. I don't think it has anything directly to do with the development of the Gatek Rylan, which was later in 2021, but that ship contained nothing in the concept models to do with the Xi'an-language. They are of course tangentially related because the Rylan was probably developed in order to make more out of the style created for the Squadron 42 capital cargo ship. If that's right, and this texture is just something that they've reused from the capital ship, it also potentially explains why there's not more Xi'an-language used in the HUD of the Syulen, as while we have words for things like self-destruct, they weren't in the texture, and in a tight development cycle, knowing that a big HUD rework is coming, it might not have been considered a worthwhile use of time right now. They might have just gone with using what they had in hand. The evidence against this is that under my last video, one of the artists on the Syulen, Dan McCabe, said that the narrative team were very helpful in guiding and translating things for them. And Dan started at CIG in 2022, so if it were just an old file lying about, that timeline of them getting translations wouldn't work. But it's also stated that the narrative team spotted the spelling mistakes in this process, and they haven't got around to fix them in the texture yet. So it's possible that the texture was a Squadron 42 asset being repurposed, and the guidance and translation was advice about how to best deploy them around the ship. In any case, I found it interesting to data mine the textures of the Syulen, and I'm looking forward to giving the Santok the same treatment when it arrives in 3.22. I hope you have found this video interesting. If you have, drop us a like and subscribe, and I will see you around the verse.